son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Welcome back to the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, your home for the stupidest intros. Today, we're joined by a very special guest who's going to give us a unique insight into a very fascinating topic. Taylor Jensen, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for coming on this show. I hear this is your first podcast appearance.
This is my first podcast, yeah.
Great.
You're right.
I fucking love that. I love that. Now, you and I have had a number of insane conversations, unhinged topics,
Yes.
or unhinged conversations relating to this topic in specific. I guess let's just open it up here. We're talking about cults.
Yeah.
We're talking about cults. In today's world, we've got a lot of options for cults, and I know,
Totally.
I know, there's some that you have a very unique perspective on. So if you want to, let's just unpack your relationship with the concept of cults here.
Yeah. So I was raised Mormon. My whole family's Mormon. So just a disclaimer to if any of my family ends up watching this, sorry. Super sorry. But I used to joke that Mormonism was like diet cult. But I think it's more like glass bottle cult. You know, it's packaged a little bit prettier than other things. But I think the big thing for me was being raised Mormon in the South, so not in Utah, being told I was in a cult my whole life from other people and being like, nah, and then getting out of it and like getting out of it at a younger age. So I didn't do a lot of rituals that are very secret that Mormons keep and things. And then I kind of was like, oh, this is a cult.
Yeah.
But Mormons do a really good job of kind of skirting certain things that constitute them as a cult, like isolating you from the world, right? If anything, they send Mormons into the world to proselyte, to bring more followers. But then you have your fundamentalist Mormon offshoots like the FLDS and Ervil LeBaron, people like that who have started their own subsects of Mormonism based on the fundamental teachings of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. And which is typically like, you know, just dudes wanting to practice polygamy.
Yeah.
Typically.
every time. Every single fucking time.
Every single fucking time. Which is just, they're all just like kind of reproductions of Joseph Smith. It's also what Joseph Smith wanted as well. But yeah, that's kind of I think I find it very fascinating because I get a little insight into the people I grew up with and my family and the things that drive people to have such extreme or strong beliefs in something like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, you've told me this before, but I don't think I've ever really like internalized you being Mormon in the South.
Yeah,
it's like double ostracized. You know, I being a person down there who didn't necessarily practice a particular religion, I felt a little bit of shade, but compounding that, I don't know. It's like a strange and hilarious. Of course, like Christians picking on you. That's so Christian. Christian behavior to be like, oh, you stupid Mormons, you don't know shit. You're crazy. Yeah, and then go to their church and think what they think.
Yeah, I moved to Hendersonville. I lived in the South since I was 4, but I moved to Hendersonville, Tennessee, when I was in middle school, and I was the new kid in town. There weren't a lot of Mormons in my school, but they were like, she's in a devil cult, which was really funny because, you know, the devil part you got wrong. But I had a lot of people try to save me. I tried to get people to, you know, save me, bring me to their Baptist church, blah, 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 that kind of thing. And even the Mormons weren't really good at keeping me on board. So like a 12-year-old Baptist could change anything for me.
Yeah, definitely not.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing because people always assume I'm from Utah, but not from Utah.
You know, I feel like every, at least American religion the extremity turns into some kind of like far right, prepper, isolationist, let's get a bunch of guns. Like, I feel like it always kind of, in the process of having many more wives comes the need to protect or, build up a massive armory to someday in the future fight with the government. I don't know. Like, it's so weird how it doesn't matter what religion it is. It's the people who take it super seriously all end up going toward the prepper direction.
Yeah, and I have an aunt out in Utah who's a prepper. She's got a bunch of property with her husband and guns and chickens, the whole prepper
food
guidebook. Yeah. Well, and the funny thing about canned food is that Mormons have been doing food storage for a long time, decades. So food storage is having non-perishable or food that will last a long time, like freeze-dried food, things like that, and potable water. So my parents have a whole cellar full of emergency rations that could feed them or their neighbors in any possible disaster that you could think of, right? Whether it's natural, whether it's political, government, whatever. So that's been like a thing that Mormons have been doing for a long time. Is kind of this like, a lot of people don't think of Mormons as like an apocalypse cult, but they are. Because even in the name, it's the Church of Latter-day Saints. The Mormons now are the saints in the latter days to fight the end of days war for God, and be like the righteous soldiers in that war. Which could go really deep into that and deep into some other things, but yeah, the intersection of like that prepper, religious extremist, right wing, conspiracy theory, new age, all of that kind of intersects in this way where it's like we all just want to be informed, and then we find these ways of being informed that are incorrect, and they feel right because it's like, well, there has to be this answer, right? There has to be this like reason for they're hiding something from me or whatever. But if anything, that just serves the system better because you're like, they're distracting you from systemic shit. But yeah, it's interesting because like I told you, I think I mentioned this last year for Christmas, I got like prepper gear.
What kind of prepper gear?
So like it was from AmericanPatriot.com. Yeah, look it up.
Going to this website.
Look it up. And it's funny because like my mom's very much like, I'll give you the gifts that I have like just randomly lying around the house. Like I got a pallet of beans too. Black beans. Just, I don't know why. Yeah, here it is. American Patriot. Here we go.
This is incredible.
And I got like a self-heating water bottle, some kind of like camping stove situation. I donated them because I was like, this is like some stuff that, I don't know, a houseless person could probably eat.
Yeah, seriously.
So I was just like, I don't want to like waste it, but I also
hoard this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing about preppers. Preppers prep for themselves.
For sure.
Preppers don't prep for like the betterment of society.
No, definitely not.
Or anything. And, if shit were to go down, they'd probably be the ones that are the most dangerous and would cause the most problems.
Well, I mean, you bring up a point, and this is kind of an argument that I've always made about most of the hardliners of any religion. If you read the books, the apocalypse is part of the story. They want that to happen. That validates their religion. That validates
it's the second coming.
They will do anything in order, and it's like any religion. And they all would happily usher in the fucking apocalypse because that means we're living out the biblical end of days.
Exactly. It's the second coming. It's when the Left Behind series, like that kind of stuff of like the righteous will be exalted and there'll be like the rest of us left.
Yeah.
That have to fight it out. That's a pretty Mormon viewpoint too. That like we're waiting for the second coming. That's why, apocalypse cult, right?
Yeah.
We're waiting for the second coming and the earth will be exalted to be the highest level of heaven. the celestial kingdom, and then we'll all kind of kill each other off before that, the non-righteous ones, while the righteous are exalted and their bodies are resurrected if they're dead.
Sick, a holy war.
Yeah. Well, and that, there's the pre-existence holy war too, that for Mormons. So we've been fighting holy wars since the before existence, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, that's really taking it back. You know, you've had it hard when before you existed, you were fighting for your life. Yeah.
Well, that's we can talk about some pre-existence war if you want to, but
no, seriously, let's just unpack that. I mean, I'm familiar with the Mormon story, even the history of Joseph Smith. In fact, his history is deeply connected to the history of Freemasonry. And there's
very deeply
a lot of similarities between the ceremonies of Mormonism and the ceremonies of Freemasonry. So, but let's go into this. This is hilarious.
So the war in the pre-existence was basically like, I'm like, where do I start? And also, just so everyone knows, I've been an ex-Mormon for a really long time. So, if I'm forgetting something or telling it wrong and you're a Mormon out there, don't come for me. But essentially, Jesus and Satan are brothers. Right? And God is their daddy. And he's like, I'm going to create this planet, which he's created other planets. That's like a whole other thing. There's like many planets created by God and other gods, because God is from a planet near the star of Kolob. It's a whole thing. So he like lived a mortal existence at one point before being exalted to godhood. And so he's like, I'm going to make Earth. I'm going to give people the choice of free will. I'm going to like do the whole, like set up the whole like savior business, blah, blah, blah. And Satan's like, send me, or, Lucifer, whatever, is like, send me, I'll like tell everyone that this is the deal and I'll make them obey you. And then Jesus is like, send me, and I'll kind of like not basically be like super upfront about it, parables and shit. But like, I'll give them a choice. And Satan doesn't like that because daddy chooses Jesus, and then a war ensues and all the spirits choose Jesus or Satan or to abstain, and they fight in the pre-existence in this celestial war. It is obviously Jesus wins, and then Satan is cast out. And this is how your like ranking of your determination of who you are on Earth is. And this isn't something that's like super widely taught in Mormonism anymore because it's racist. So we know that they kind of like, we're like, let's change some stuff. Let's kind of like let Black people in the church in the 70s and stuff
achieve mass appeal. Yeah.
Yeah. So that they can stay relevant and maintain their power and their tax-free status and like the political influence that they have in Utah. Sure. But basically, if you fought on the right side, fought on Jesus's side, you're a white Mormon, baby. So like, I was righteous. Okay. I fought on the right side. I got born into a Mormon family that I got to choose and be white and all this stuff. And then if you fought on, there's a couple different versions of this, right? Because Mormons love to change shit. So there's either that it's demons that are the ones that fought for Satan were turned into demons and like live amongst us and try to tempt us, or you're a person of color.
That is,
or you're disabled.
Yeah, so on brand. So
yeah, because they loved the Mark of Cain thing back in the day, and then also in the Book of Mormon, the Native Americans are cursed with brown skin. That's why all Native people have brown skin. You know, Mormonism is a white supremacist cult that it changes things in order to stay relevant, and then and that's a big aspect of it, right? Is that we're changing things, we're negating the past, and you can't ask any questions about it. We're infallible. Prophets are infallible. God is infallible, but we won't talk about that little mistake we made before. Infallible. Don't question us. Put your worries on a shelf. That's my favorite one. Just put them on a shelf. Put your worries on a shelf. Don't worry about it. Don't ask any questions.
It's honestly so crazy because, like, as you were describing that story, if that were a sci-fi novel, it'd be fucking sick.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd read it and enjoy it.
1000%. I mean, the Book of Mormon is just Bible fanfic.
Yeah.
And it's like pretty wild Bible fanfic. Like, I mean, so much Christian fanfic that Joseph Smith wrote. I almost said Jesus, which Joseph Smith would appreciate. He did liken himself to Jesus a lot.
I'm sure he did.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I mean, I lost my thought.
The fan fiction. He's a fan fiction writer.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it was last podcast on the left made the joke that if you're into sci-fi, you're an L. Ron Hubbard guy. If you're into fantasy, you're Joseph Smith guy.
No, absolutely.
And it's very true, and it's also interesting because you see a lot of different sci-fis incorporate, like, there's like just happens to be like a Mormon space station where like the Mormons have their own space station, or like whatever. I mean, Battlestar Galactica was made by a bunch of Mormons. Yeah. And Mormons love fantasy. They love it. They love fantasy. They love sci-fi.
It's a part of their lexicon. You know,
it is.
I was not aware of the element of multi-seeding of the universe. I didn't understand that was that sounds like a pretty core concept of the story of Mormonism, and that really changes, like, you know, the other religions that assume that we are the only life in the universe.
Not Mormons.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Aliens,
they were
baby.
Kind of ahead of that. I mean, but there's an argument to be made, like, if you go far enough back and interpret, even the Catholic Church's early doctrine, like, there could be some alien shit, and that's another institution that, like, you know, changed the story over the history. Let's just not acknowledge all the horrible things that we undeniably did.
Let's rewrite the Bible, King James.
Yep.
You know, like, let's and that's just it's such an interesting thing too, because it is very cult-like, right? We don't give you any autonomy, education, resources, information. We control the flow of information to you. For so 100%. Long, the masses were illiterate and had no access to reading the Bible themselves. So it was just the interpretations of monarchs, people in power, people in power in the church. Yeah, exactly. So it's a similar kind of thing that has become really, really mainstream. And, like, well, I mean, religion's always been pretty mainstream, but the way that certain rules we have for cults kind of let those religions off because of, like, the isolation aspect, like cutting you off. Like, that's a huge part of cults, right? Is that you have to be, like, kind of cut off or isolated from other groups so that that information is, like, completely indoctrinated. All that you hear, all that you see, we're not having any influence to disrupt what the leader or leaders might be telling you, which could be said of some religions as well. I mean, I know definitely, maybe not all religions, or at least like the general population of most religions, but the deeper you get into the subsets of any religion or any group of people practicing a religion, it can easily get to the isolationist thing, or at least at a bare minimum, the only time you ever spend time with other people are with people in this group. And you're completely discouraged to have a life outside of this group until before you know it, you're giving them all your money, and, you know, you live with them, and that's it. 1000%. And it's interesting. There's this book, I think it's Jesus the Sorcerer. Have you heard of it? I have not, but I'll pull it up here. Robert Connor, he's this kind of curmudgeon-y intellectual who does stuff about Jesus and, like, early Christianity and stuff. And I mean, the argument that he makes, I guess it's not really an argument. He's done a lot of studying and done a lot of research about, like, that time period versus just looking through the Bible as a resource for historical context. Yeah. But basically that, like, Jesus was the first really successful cult leader. So, and that's, to say that is that, like, in the time when, like, Jesus was coming up in that area, there was a lot of religious freedom that we don't actually really think about. There were lots of different gods, different temples. It doesn't mean that the time period was great. There was slavery. There was, women were treated horribly, all this type of stuff. And there was a lot of poverty and, like, a huge disparity in, like, caste system, right? So Jesus comes along and he is pandering to the poor and to women, and he's taking the most vulnerable groups, the least educated groups, and he's doing exactly what cult leaders do, right?
Oh my God.
Exactly. And he's indoctrinating them and saying, I am the only one. There is no one else. There is one God. So changing them and then convincing them to commit acts of violence against temples and other religions in order to wipe them out. And that happened for hundreds of years.
Yeah, long stretch of time.
Christians go and burn down other people's temples, no false idols, right? Where before it was a lot of religious freedom. Again, it's not a perfect time, but there was a lot of religious freedom, and that he's kind of been the most pervasive and successful cult leader that we've ever had. I mean, for thousands of years, his influence has lasted.
Yeah, it's pretty profound.
And it's no one but me. I am a vengeful and a jealous God. That's very cult leader to me. I'm vengeful. I'm jealous. I don't take criticism well.
Sounds pretty human.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty human.
Sounds pretty human to me, but then also all-knowing, omnipotent, and compassionate. So we've got a bit of a contradiction happening. Yeah. And then
definitely.
Yeah, and then so many people, so many cults are offshoots of secular religion. I mean, like I said, with Mormonism, the FLDS, Warren Jeffs, the Orville LeBaron, the whole LeBaron murders and everything that happened in like the 70s and 80s. These are just offshoots of men who have a God complex and who are, and even Joseph Smith, right? Having a God complex, wanting power, wanting many wives, many young wives. And then you have Brigham Young coming along later, and he's a psychopath who he was really into like the blood atonement stuff. So there's a lot of that, and like the Orville LeBaron thing that he took from blood atonement. So like, let's just murder anyone that doesn't agree with me. Let's just spill the blood of the sinner. We love it.
There was that show on Hulu. Andrew Garfield was in it about Under
the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah, that show was fucking amazing. He did a great job in that. And then there was I can't remember where the fuck I saw this, but it was like a dramatic reenactment of Joseph Smith's life and like the trials and tribulations and leading up into the blood atonement. I want to say maybe it was a part of a documentary that was going into like the inner workings of the history of the church and the modern context of secrecy and stuff. I can't remember. If I can track it down, I'll send it to you because it was really good. But
please do.
They spent a lot of time talking about how it doesn't really get talked about in modern history, but in very recent Mormon history, there was just murdering. Oh, they were like happy to do it.
So violent.
Yeah.
So unbelievably violent. And now you have this idea of these like bright, shiny, happy people. Mormons are so nice. Every Mormon I've ever met was so kind to me.
Docile
and I'm like,
and chill. Yeah.
I'm like, well, converse to convert. Okay. Because that's just the way that it is. They're talking to you to fellowship you. And even most Mormons are woefully unaware of their own history because if it doesn't come directly from the church, don't listen to it.
Yeah,
it's not true. And there's this thing called the CES letter. For any chance that there is an active Mormon listening out there, go read the CES letter. See how you feel afterwards. It is like a huge reason why tons of Mormons leave the church, because it's just like a compilation of all of these things and more. Under the Banner of Heaven is about the Mountain Meadows Massacre, it talks about the Mountain Meadows Massacre, which is, early Mormon settlers coming into Utah, lying to Native people about, we're just passing through for the gold rush, whatever. Native people being like, well, we'll help you survive the winter. Them trying to get those. Yes, Under the Banner of Heaven. It's a good book. And this one is about the Laffertys, the Lafferty murders, which if you haven't watched Daughters of the Cult, is new on Hulu. It's all about the Orville LeBaron family.
Oh no, that's definitely we were just watching that.
Yes. And this one's a totally different one.
Yeah.
To digress, a big thing about why these men become so emboldened to start these offshoots of the Mormon faith is that every worthy Mormon man receives the priesthood and is the direct connection to God in his home.
For his family, yeah.
For his family. And then the promise is that, like what we were talking about, like seeding the universe, is that people are like, do you get your own planet when you die? And I'm like, well, I don't get shit because I'm a woman. So I get sexual servitude for all eternity if I'm lucky.
Neat.
Right? But if you're a Mormon man, you are not given a planet. You are elevated to God. You have the choice to be elevated to godhood if you make it to the celestial kingdom, to create your own planets, to create universes, to create, the ego that has to provide you with is massive. The way that you view the world, the way that you move through the world.
Well, and that the only people that you interact with also believe that.
Right. And they reinforce it, and they are obedient to you, and they're, if they're right, if they're being righteous.
Right.
And
if they know it's good for them.
Yeah. If you want celestial glory. And like, that's the thing about polygamy is there is no polygamy in Mormonism anymore in this earthly life. But when you are a god and you need to populate those planets, because you can't just make people, you have to have spirit sex.
Right. Yeah, of course. It makes
to make sense. Them.
Yeah.
You're going to have multiple spirit babies. You're going to have multiple spiritual wives along with the wife that you married in the temple and were sealed to for all time and eternity, which is a ceremony I have never witnessed. I've never been allowed to go to. I was not allowed to go to my sister's wedding in the temple. I'm not allowed to know what happens in it. My parents won't talk to me about their wedding. They won't talk to me about their garments that they wear. But if you're curious, No Name Noah is a guy who a while ago posted a video on YouTube of he had taken a secret camera in a book into the endowment ceremony and into the wedding ceremony and filmed it and posted it online. So that was at like 25. That was the first time I ever even witnessed these things. And it's so different from Sunday church, Wednesday church. I went to church seminary every morning in high school. Yeah. No Name Noah, baby.
Which one was it?
So it's probably the hidden camera footage of Mormon temple ritual.
There we go. Yeah.
And it's, this one's just kind of short. Oh, also this Natalia Grace thing is pretty
super
wild.
Fucked. That documentary is super fucked.
Super fucked. But yeah, so here's some, so this is the stuff that people wear, right? This is your temple clothes. You have your little cloths to represent Adam and Eve being like naked in the garden. This little altar, I believe this is a wedding situation, but I also don't know because the endowment ceremony is like an hour long. It's so long. You do all these little handshakes and secret passwords and stuff to learn, to know, to get into heaven. You watch this whole play on Adam and Eve. And they've changed this ritual multiple times. You used to swear to slit your throat and slice open your belly if you ever told anyone about it. There used to be a washing and anointing section. I think there still is a washing and anointing, but you're not naked anymore being washed by people, like old people in the temple.
Weird. Just weird.
Just weird. And like when I think about it, like my parents have been doing the temple ceremony since the 70s. And here's the thing. You do it once for yourself, and then you go every single month and you do it for dead people.
Damn.
Yeah. Like I did baptisms for the dead. I've been baptized for hundreds of dead people. Like as a surrogate body.
That is intense. That's commitment. As a child, what is that like?
As a teen, yeah.
Like, but like, what are you thinking? Like, are you fully invested at this point? Are you not even questioning it? And even if you're not even questioning it, like, what did that feel like to conceptualize as a young adult?
Yeah, it's fed to you that it's this like really sacred thing that you're doing as like a charitable work for dead people.
The spiritual realm,
Yeah, because essentially it's that all these people have died and not done their rituals correctly. So we have to do it correctly for them in their names so that when the earth dies, when the second coming happens, and we're placed, because everyone right now is like in purgatory waiting for judgment. that those people will have the right rituals so that they can be properly placed. There has been a lot of controversy about it, especially when they did a bunch of people who died in the Holocaust. That was really fucked up. It pissed off the Jewish community a lot, rightfully so. And then also like the amount of people are like, I did this famous person, and someone else is like, no, I did this famous person. And there's like, well, how many people have been that, like, how many times has this person been, their name gone through the temple, which is a huge reason why Mormons do genealogy, which is a huge reason why genealogy companies use Mormon databases for genealogy, because they have the largest genealogy database in the world, so they can baptize your ancestors.
That is fucking insane.
Yeah.
That is such serious commitment.
Yeah, and like my parents go every month.
Like beyond life.
Beyond the grave, baby.
Like,
we're going to get you.
Like, do you think there's somebody in the Mormon church who's like keeping a running tally of all the people that die? He's like, geez, numbers are looking good this year.
Yeah,
we
right.
can get some serious conversions. We got a lot of people leaving this realm of existence.
It's more so through your genealogy. So like they encourage everyone to do genealogy, and it's really heavily pushed. And like I said, biggest genealogy resource in the world. Like they have whole genealogy libraries, and they keep a record of all of their baptisms and their members. Again, not very good at this record keeping, since there are multiple people who are like, I baptized Abraham Lincoln. Oh, it was me. And it was like, no, it was me. But that is a huge reason for that, is to do the work for your ancestors, for other people's ancestors. And just, they got lists. So you go in, you're in a white jumpsuit, you get the laying on of hands, anointed with oil, blessed oil, and all these old men put their hands on your head and bless you with all these names. And then you go to a font in the temple that's held up by 12 life-size marble oxen. It's all very ornate and pretty and marble. That's the temple, not church. And you just get dunked. And I mean, for me, I was always a pretty bad Mormon. I will say that. I was never really gung-ho. I was really excited to get a job so that I could say, even if I wasn't working on Tuesday, because that's when I went to the temple every first Tuesday of the month, I had to work. I had to go to work. So sometimes I get dropped off at work. Like I got a job at 14 because I was like, I'm done. And I wanted some autonomy. And I just get dropped off and walk around for 8 hours if I wasn't working, because I didn't want to go to the temple. I was also rebelling and technically wasn't worthy to go to the temple. So a lot of mine was guilt for lying about, because it has so much guilt for lying, because I didn't want to get caught and be punished for like smoking and smoking weed and whatever. And so I would just lie and say I had to work so I didn't have to go to the temple anymore. And it took me a while to realize that like I just was like having a lot of issues with the church versus like, oh, I'm Mormon, I'm just having my rebellious time right now and I'll go back. Once I kind of started learning about other Eastern philosophies and realized that I didn't have to believe in anything. And it was like a huge kind of aha moment for me, because it just felt like it was like, this is just who you are. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. You're just Mormon. That's it. And so for me, it was just like trying to get out of going to the temple, because I was like, I'm not worthy. I'm a sinner. But
it compounds the teenage angst considerably.
1000% compounds the teenage angst. And then, I think also compounded the allure of rebelling, because if you constantly talk about it, if you're constantly talking about sex, but saying, don't think about it, all you're going to think about is sex. Yeah. That's the way that it is. If they're like, don't do this, don't think about it, and we're going to talk about it all
You're terrible if you think
the time, and we're not going to stop talking about it. You won't stop talking about how we need to remain abstinent and sex and heavy petting and all these terms. So now all I'm thinking about is sex. Like
I wasn't before, but since you've been yelling about it,
exactly. And so and then it made it I think so much more alluring too, especially And I'm glad I rebelled early, because I watched a lot of kids rebel later who just lost their shit and went crazy.
Sure.
But an interesting thing that I found about like the Mother God thing, to segue into Mother God, because we really need to talk about Mother God.
Let's fucking do it. We're absolutely at that point.
Is the like obsession with kind of New Age stuff that Mormonism has. That kind of is, it's like the colloidal silver thing in Mother God, right? I took colloidal silver all the time as a kid. Like I grew up going to chiropractors, not being vaccinated. That kind of woo-woo culture, like doTERRA essential oils are a Mormon company.
Right.
They're all about this health and wellness kind of stuff. And so there is like this, Mother God, the colloidal silver, baby. That was really wild to me, and the thing that's so interesting about Mother God is the mental gymnastics that it took for these people to get
well,
here.
I to be honest, like I never understood what the trigger was for her, like what sent her down this path. I don't know. Maybe it was discussed. I just didn't pick up on like what was the thing that sent her down that path. And
I know that there was some mention of like abusive relationships with men, and then definitely eating disorders was like a thing that definitely pulled its way in there. But I think that it was her own indoctrination that she took herself down to believing these extreme things, like living with that guy, the first father God.
Amaranth White Eagle.
Yeah.
Robert Saltz gave her.
Yeah. And just kind of the, I don't know exactly. I wish that we could hear from her, but obviously we can't.
Yeah.
And also another one that I was going to bring up, again, to digress, is the Twin Flame.
Oh yeah, no,
Twin Flame group.
There were two good documentaries about that recently.
Yes, yeah. Which again, these are just the thing about, because people always are like, I would never get pulled into a cult. That would never happen to me.
No, seriously.
And that's so easy to say, but they're preying. The thing about cults is they prey on the most vulnerable and the things that we feel the most vulnerable about. Like Twin Flame preys on your loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Twin Flame preys on your longing for connection and acceptance and partnership, and uses it as this way to gain control over you, manipulate you, while giving you a semblance of what you want when it's really harmful for you.
Yeah.
Because they don't obviously care about that. I mean,
no, not
obviously.
At all. The most fucked one was the person who got the restraining order. They're
oh my God,
you're just not, they don't understand. You just need to make them understand. You're not making them understand.
You're not loving them enough.
It's just,
yeah.
Like, honestly, here's the thing. Like, I have spent a lot of time, probably my gateway into this whole subject was Jonestown. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember at what point, probably at some point in college, I went down that rabbit hole. I found the death tape. That became like a whole like slice of my existence. Mm-hmm. My early 20s, when I heard that, it disturbed me in a way that was profound. And that kind of like set me down all these rabbit holes. It's always, I feel like there's always a little bit of some kind of personality disorder. Like
1000%.
These guys, narcissists. Other
1000%.
cult leaders, sociopathic narcissists, or more sociopathic than narcissist. Like that, I feel like that is a absolute common denominator. And, you know, even just the idea of like most people who, when they say they're communing with voices in their head and that there is God, like most people, when they say that, we put them in jail.
Yeah. Right? We put them in a mental institution. We do
lock them away, give them drugs and lobotomize them, you know, like make sure that they don't ever tell me those things again. Yeah. And I it's just wild to me how high functioning, but I guess it's not even high functioning, it's just self-preservation, like it's greed. It's greed and the desire to feel power and to have control over somebody. It's like in a different life they could have become serial killers.
Yeah, like politicians.
Yeah, no, exactly. Same thing. Like that they'll rank in the same areas on the sociopathic or narcissistic scales.
And that's the thing is, like, you could even argue that there's like a cult of patriotism. There's a cult of nationalism.
Absolutely.
There's that, like saying, and the thing about it too is that with these cults like Twin Flame, Mother God, Jonestown, Manson, when we say cult, it's like we think of this like big kind of evil entity. It's a person. Yeah. It's one person, maybe two, but typically one person who it creates this ripple effect. And in order to do those types of things, in order to push things that far and take things that far, you have to have some sort of personality disorder. Yeah. Like you have to have some sort, like narcissism, being a sociopath, the need for power, the need for dominance, the grandiose idea of self to do these things. And then once you are in that environment, as we see with Mother God, it can reinforce that in yourself and then also create a dangerous situation for the leader themselves.
Well, it's the Mother of God one for me was so fucked because most of the cults that I had come into contact with, like there was some type of proto-religious story that they were reinterpreting. Mm-hmm. But like there was a pre-existing body of that religion that already believed the core like the core theme of the story, and then they might narrow in on some details and say this is what we're going to focus on, these elements, and this is how we're going to practice. This one, she was just making shit up, and she had them all. I don't know if, for me, I feel like this one in particular was drugs. Everyone was so doped up most of the time. They're just like, whatever. That's cool. That just works. Mm-hmm. I feel like that was a fundamental piece of this. But the whole fucking intergalactic federation, like,
Robin Williams.
Like it was that.
There were some wild people on that list.
They were looking in the camera and being like, we're waiting for Robin Williams to come down on the spaceship and pick up her body.
Yeah. Or like the one when she was like, Gene Wilder wanted you to have a lollipop today. I'll never forget that. And like Rodney Dangerfield is on there. I
want to see if I can
find the collage.
Yeah. Galactic
Federation, baby.
Federation collage.
And like this whole like here we are.
Oh yeah, we got John Denver, John Lennon, Gene Wilder,
John
Michael
Lennon
Jackson,
is Ashtar.
Oh, of course. Yeah, duh, of course.
Yeah, Rodney Dangerfield's on here somewhere, I swear to God. Chris Farley, Bowie, Tupac, Whitney Houston, Steve Irwin.
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Steve Irwin's a good one.
Patrick Swayze.
Carrie Fisher. Oh my
Carrie
God.
Fisher. Oh God, what's his name?
This like
Superman.
When I saw this collage, I was like, she was just making this up. She would be reading a magazine and be like, "Ooh, I want him to be in the Galactic Federation." And she'd cut his picture out and put him on the collage. But the people, they were all so fucked up.
And how
believed it.
Yeah, and how much she indoctrinated them led to
her dying. Yeah.
Her dying because they, never do we have such an example of totally supported and aiding and abetting someone's alcoholism to the umpteenth degree. To the point that she got at, she wouldn't be able to drink herself to that point. You wouldn't even be able to get up and get yourself a drink at that point. Yeah. Like at some point you would be immobile and not be, but she has people facilitating this for her. bringing, and then also the massive amounts of starvation that are happening. She's not eating at all. She's only drinking alcohol as quote unquote medicine for her god body, and drinking copious amounts of homemade colloidal silver. Like, they're making their own colloidal silver. It's not even like regulated. Just disclaimer, don't take fucking colloidal silver.
Yeah.
It's not good for anything, and it just deposits silver in your organs. It's not a good thing. But the mix of it all, it's just kind of like we've never seen this kind of extreme, there, and then she's asking to go to a hospital. She's at this point of extreme pain and desperation. And they're like, she would never want to go to a 3D hospital.
This guy.
Yeah, and this motherfucker is just, talk about personality disorder, narcissism. I mean, this guy's off of it.
Well, and like you said it before, like, she surrounds herself with these people who are easily buying into this thing, and without her strict guidance or clear sentient mind, they were left to make sense of it, and just they kill her. And at the end, she's begging for them to take me to an actual hospital, and she has a very long them describing her death was hardcore, and that's hours. She must have smelled terrible, like that. There nothing about that situation would have been pleasant or peaceful. And the fact that they couldn't they were so gacked out on whatever that they couldn't recognize, like, oh shit, let me put aside these beliefs for a second. And
so deeply indoctrinated and trusting of her also the fact that she's not eating and hasn't eaten anything. There's months of alcohol in her system and a lot of colloidal silver in her system. I think kind of was it's like this pickling effect, this like preservation effect that allowed them to have her body there for a lot longer than, just they had that body for a long time, long time. Let
me see.
And in a hotel room, nonetheless, for a while. I mean, this wasn't even just at their space. They had rented a hotel room where the staff was asking, like, where is she? Because we haven't seen her. And she's dead. She's a corpse.
Let me just read. For those of the folks that don't know this is just the summary to give articulate detail to what we're discussing right here. In September 2020, Carlson reportedly was in poor health and was paralyzed from the waist down, with Carlson herself stating that she had cancer. In early April 2021, the group was located in an RV park in Mount Shasta in Northern California, but were asked to leave due to overcrowding. Carlson was last seen alive by someone outside the group on April 10, 2021. On April 28th, 2021, 18 days later, the mummified corpse of Carlson was discovered in the Mission House near Crestone. Its state of decay suggested that she had been dead for several weeks. And dude, you're totally right about the pickling. That's why her body was mummified, because of the alcohol and the colloidal silver
and the no food.
Yeah,
you didn't have any fat on your body, or like your organs were already depleted.
No nutrients. Everything had been drained. Yeah, she was 45 at the time of her death. The body was found in a sleeping bag wrapped in Christmas lights. The face covered in glitter. In what authorities stated was a makeshift shrine. 7 members of the group were charged with abuse of a corpse, as well as child abuse due to the presence of 2 children on the property. It's just so fucking sick, dude. And this is what she looked like. This was like before, they said there's this whole moment in the documentary where she's somewhat coherent, but then she's dying. Yeah. And then they say that she dies, but then she like comes back to life for a little bit, or like she's alive, but her physical body is dead. And then she actually dies, and they're waiting for fucking Robin Williams to come down.
Yeah.
What do we do with this body?
Too, is like they're waiting for the Galactic Federation to come and get her, because that's what she's told them and promised them. And at some point, this typically happens, right, with a lot of groups, is that like things aren't like spanning out the way that the leader told us. I think Heaven's Gate was another one.
The date comes and goes.
It comes and goes, and they're like, "What's going on?" And Heaven's Gate, then they'll move to like a more extreme thing. And luckily, no one else died in the Mother God cult, but you can see some of the followers and how still unbelievably emaciated they are. I mean, there's one woman that's still very, very thin, and the fact that they're having to rebuild their lives, but also they still believe. They still have this, what are they left with after this, to rebuild their lives with this kind of mindset and this kind of background. But the reason why they got into it is because they were like, oh, these people, they think like me. They think differently. They see things the way I see them. They're saying things that make so much sense to me. And then you get them in with that, and you get them in with the fact that the existence of life is so hard. The unknowingness of life is so hard. Just not knowing anything about our existence, why the fuck we're here, what happens after we die, yada yada. It's the reason why people get into religion is community, solace, something to get you through the day and help you sleep at night.
Yeah.
And it's all the same reasons why people get involved in cults. Sure. But the power of the mind and the power of manipulation and isolation, sleep deprivation, starvation, all of these tactics lead to these extreme views that take a lot to undo.
Similar tactics they use in the military during training and in interrogation. So
yes, 1,000%
correlation there, but
yeah. And I mean, you could make again correlations with military and certain culty mindsets and aspects. And some people who are in the military are very indoctrinated into full trust, and some people are like, I don't trust at all, and I got out of it. And again, there's nuance to that. It's not saying that they're the exact same, but there are so many instances where people are indoctrinated, whether it's more extreme or less extreme. So when it comes back to that, well, it would never be me. Well, maybe it is you, but in a different extremity.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Maybe it's something that you subscribe to that is an extreme thought or a group or whatever. But I never want to say that like that wouldn't be me. I want to say that could be me. So I will remain vigilant.
Well, and yeah, I think it is important to always remember that this is always just like it's all perspective, and in any way, any person could belong to a cult of any severity. Even preferring a brand. Some people have brand loyalty that is almost cult-like.
Yeah.
One of the
Stanley
things,
Cup. Sorry.
Yeah, sports. That's absolutely cult shit. I say that all the time.
I meant like those Stanley mugs. Is that what they're called? Anyway,
Stanley mugs.
Is that what they're called? People are like obsessed with them, and they like really love them, and it's like a TikTok thing.
Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's literally just like a water bottle, but people are like,
"Oh, hey, this isn't a water." Oh, that's not a Stanley. That's a Muigo. It's got a chip tray.
I mean, I'll join that cult.
Seriously,
sure.
No, but like that's. I read this book. My friend gave me this book called American Cosmic, and American Cosmic is written by this religious studies person named Diana Pasulka, and Diana Pasulka wrote this book at the intersection of UFOs, UAPs, and religion. And her particular focus is on Catholicism, because I'm pretty sure she was raised Catholic. So it's just like her vernacular is framed within the context of Catholic religion, but the Catholic religion. But she argues that the even people's obsession with UFOs or wanting to know more about the beyond or whatever is above us, that in itself is the beginnings of a religion, and in some ways becomes very cult-like with how people believe certain stories. And my interpretation of this is right, yours isn't, and I'll fight you for it.
Right? Yeah, it's like it's how and when our brain, because the human brain longs for patterns, longs to find patterns, create patterns, and it will create patterns when there are no patterns
for whatever.
there.
Yeah, of course.
For whatever reason, because we're trying to make sense of something. And it's not based on logic. It's based on how our brains operate already. So if I can make a connection, if I can make a pattern, well, then I'm right. This makes sense. It clicks. It resonates. It's, then that's how beliefs can get taken even further. But I mean, we've just seen like how easy it is to be manipulated in your reality, but also when people join these things, they're not, I'm joining a cult. And a lot of times even in the beginning, they can be kind of innocuous at first, like even the Synanon one, right?
Yeah.
Where it really was like people loved it. People found this as a resource to help people who are addicts to have another resource besides Al-Anon and NA and those types of things, to have this community of people to kind of do things another way. And one thing that we've gotten, we're not super good at in secular society is community. And one of the only modern examples we have of really, really solid community in like the Western world is religion.
Yeah.
Religion organizes like crazy. Who's out there feeding the homeless? Who's out there organizing people when there's like even the tornado that just hit Tennessee? It's a lot of religious groups and Christians. It's one thing that they're really, really, really good at. And we long for this as people. So Synanon is a great example of how we're using community and we're going to try something different and work together and bring people together that can turn into this thing that through mainly the ego of one man shifts the whole landscape, and how these isolated groups that, don't have a lot of there's not a lot of variety of thought happening. It's kind of like you have to think this way and follow this trajectory, can turn into something more sinister, right? But I mean, because Synanon, a lot of people that left it that are older have very beautiful memories of it versus like the children who are raised in it.
Yeah, who got
Yeah, and even then you have
the short end of that stick for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Who didn't experience it in the good old days when it was,
much more wholesome.
Pure. If you want to say that, even their whole game thing where it's just everyone berating each other for this period of time, that's such a manipulation tactic.
Sure.
To get people emotional, riled up.
Well, and then they're broadcasting it so that you can listen to other games all across the country.
Yeah.
That's fucking sports right there. Like people betting on who's going to win the game.
Exactly. And that, you can see people become addicted to that feeling.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Sports
it replaces the hit. Yeah.
It replaces the hit. It's that those endorphins, the chemicals that are released during an event like that when your emotions are high. It's like when people are like, am I religious or do I just like really like community music events where everybody feels inspired by music? When you go to a concert versus like a worship session,
right?
It's the evoking of feelings, and then and just how really malleable our brains and our perception can be. It's something that we really like. Even if you isolate yourself, the narrative is not going to be reality. The narrative is going to come into itself and spiral, and you're going to reinforce things that aren't real.
Yeah.
Unless you have something else to break it up.
Right.
So of course, cults cut off anything that could break it up and have
no external input. Yeah.
No external input. And that's the thing, like, Mormons exist in the world, but they're heavily, heavily, heavily taught to not read anything about the church that doesn't come from the church.
Yeah.
Period.
Classic church.
Period.
Yeah.
So you don't even get another side. You don't even get anything to break up
all that stuff's evil.
Yeah, exactly. It's Satan trying to sway you, or it's society coming to attack you. If you're right, you're persecuted. That's another thing that's used in a lot of cult tactics, where it's like, well, we have something that they don't want us to have.
That's why they're holding us down. Yeah,
exactly. That's why they're coming for us. That's why we all need to kill ourselves. That's why we all need to do blank, kill these people, start this race war. Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever the fucking stupid agenda is.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a really interesting insight into like us as people and what drives us and what we'll do for that little bit of solace, that even if it's not real, it's like you have an answer, you feel right when we always feel wrong.
It's all we want.
it's always, we just want to be right. We're humans.
Yeah.
But also to just like, not knowing is scary.
Well, I try and say that all the time, is like, I get that not knowing what is beyond whatever this plane of existence is scary.
Yeah.
But when I look at the alternatives and how quickly those alternatives can turn into some batshit crazier shit than not knowing, I'll take the uncertainty. Like that, to me, I take more peace not knowing if knowing, caring about it leads me to that kind of behavior or living because honestly, like, you hear about these people and the lives that they lived at the peak of the shittiness of whatever cult. It's horrible existence.
It's not actually better, right? And for me, I also find solace in unknowing, because it means there's more to know.
Yeah.
And that's exciting to me. The pursuit of knowledge, even forever. I'll never know it. I'll never know it all. I'll never understand it all. Anything is possible. Yeah. It leaves the wonder and is still there. The curiosity is still there. And I love to pontificate. If I know everything, I can't pontificate.
That sounds boring as shit,
Yeah, it's boring. And if we
so that's the answer? Oh.
Yeah. The answer is no answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
The answer is stay curious, and I think that also it's like there's an obsession with the individualized self. The whole thing is what's going to happen to me. Where will I be? I'm going to be a ghost. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to go here. I'm this individual entity, instead of the fact that like everything that you are is your brain and what your eyes let you see and what your skin lets you touch and feel, the limited amount of light that you can see, the limited amount of range of sound you can hear, things that you can perceive that are even real. So everything that I am is just what my brain has made of me, my little flesh mound up here. My meat suit, and so why is it that we as humans, we're so egotistical, and it's all about like, well, I have to still exist as
save
a me.
My soul. Yeah.
Like my soul, who I am, my individuality. When, for me, I like to think about it like a body decaying, is that I'm reabsorbed and organized and redistributed and
transferred back into the system.
And I'm not a me anymore, because everything that is me is just what my brain has perceived as reality.
Even, on the fucking atomic level, the things that you are were something else at some point.
The things that I am are stardust.
Yeah.
That's the same shit. So why would I still be individualized? But religion really drives in that individual self, that responsibility for oneself, the soul, and you live for then. It's a whole existence of living for what's to come. What reward will I get later for now? Instead of being like, you don't get anything. It's
not the point.
You don't get any. There is no point, sweetie.
Yeah, that's not the point at all. Okay, here, wait. How much? You got another like 20 minutes?
Sure.
All right, cool. We're gonna end this portion of the podcast and go to the extra legitimate business portion of this podcast. If you want to check out the XLB, you got to join the Patreon. So join the Patreon, like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me on this portion. This has been hilarious. I didn't even mean to do that. That's hilarious.
I love it.
But stick around. We'll just continue this here in a second after the outro credits, and we'll talk about. There's two. I want to tell you a little bit about the Finders thing, just as just a seed planter, and then there's like this hilarious aspect of Scientology that I want to talk about. But for everyone who's watching this on YouTube, join the Patreon. That is all. Thank you.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The End. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more totally legitimate business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.